Now, I know that many of you are greatly and rightly concerned about the recent shooting death of 17-year-old Trayvon Martin, a young man whose future has been lost to the ages. As most of you know, 3 weeks ago, the Department of Justice launched an investigation into this incident, which remains open at this time, and prevents me from talking in detail about this matter. However, I can tell you that in recent weeks, Justice Department officials, including Assistant Attorney General for the Civil Rights Division, Tom Perez, and the United States Attorney for the Middle District of Florida, Robert O'Neill, have traveled to Sanford, Florida, to meet with the Martin family, the community, and local authorities. The FBI is assisting local law enforcement officials, and representatives from the Community Relations Service, the Justice Department's peacemakers, are continuing to meet with civil rights leaders, law enforcement officers, and area residents to address and to help alleviate community tensions.
All right, folks, that's Eric Holder at the Al Sharpton National Action Network, convention back in 2012, and you heard what he had to say. Joining us now is a man who has had his organization uncover documentation of direct involvement by the Justice Department with regard to anti-Zimmerman protests down in Sanford, Florida. We welcome in Tom Fitton, Judicial Watch president, also happens to be author of the New York Times bestseller, The Corruption Chronicles. Hey, Tom, how are you?
Hey, good to be with you again, Mr. Molesworth.
Always out, please, Steve. Otherwise, I have to call you Mr. Fitton, and I don't really want to do that. No, I'm kidding. But, Steve, please. Okay, so tell us through a FOIA request what Judicial Watch has uncovered.
Well, we uncovered documents from this community relations service that is run by the Justice Department that is criminally investigating Zimmerman, according to the Attorney General, that they were down there organizing protests. And the documents show, and as a quote, they were seeking reimbursement for one official for being deployed to Sanford to work marches, demonstrations, and rallies related to the shooting and death of an African-American teen by a neighborhood watch captain. Another document, to work marches, demonstrations, and rallies to provide support to protest deployment in Florida. Technical assistance, conciliation, and outside mediation during demonstrations planned in Sanford. Let's be clear here. There were three parties involved. There was the Zimmermans, Mr. Zimmerman. There were the Florida officials, both local and state, who were in a position to prosecute him, and the leftist agitators and protesters that wanted to have him prosecuted. The Justice Department was only dealing with two of the three. Those who wanted him prosecuted and those who were going to prosecute him. And in the end, and the Justice Department's CRS people were down there aiding and abetting these individuals. They arranged a police escort in one instance to bring student protesters into Sanford, who then went on to sit in at the police chief's office. And of course, after all these protests, what happened? The police chief was fired, or quote, asked to resign, but he was technically, practically speaking, fired. And then Zimmerman himself was indicted. And given the weakness, Steve, of the prosecutor's case, I think both left and right honest commentators are saying, boy, what a weak case this has been thus far. You have to wonder whether the case would have been brought at all, but for the Justice Department's extraordinary intervention and helping to manage, to put it most charitably, these racially over-the-top demonstrations. I mean, when you got Al Sharpton running things, and the Attorney General kowtowing Al Sharpton, I mean, that shows you where the Justice Department's coming from.
Absolutely, and I want to play another cut, the previous cut. I don't know if we could play the cut before the one we just played, which I believe would be, I don't know what it would be, but it's, probably 45. And this is, this should be Eric Holder, if I'm not mistaken, 46. This should be Eric Holder praising Al Sharpton at that same National Action Network function. Here we go.
Thank you very much, Reverend Al. I appreciate your kind words, and I'm especially grateful for your prayers and for your partnership your friendship, and also for your tireless efforts to speak out for the voiceless, to stand up for the powerless, and to shine a light on the problems we must solve and the promises that we must fill. It's a privilege to join with you, Reverend Richardson, and with Executive Director Mallory, and so many distinguished religious leaders, elected officials, committed activists, and concerned citizens, and really kicking off the National Action Network's 14th Annual Convention. Now,
all right, that's from cnsnews.com, and I apologize for the poor quality of the audio, but that's how it was. So his affection for Al Sharpton, no secret there. But getting back to exactly what the Justice Department did, he talks about in that speech, the first cut we heard coming out of the break, how the Justice Department sent people down there to investigate. What you found and what you've told us and what you've documented is separate and apart from Justice Department investigators who might go and investigate many crimes to see if there was prosecution warranted or civil rights violations, etc. This was above and beyond. This was specific to supporting anti-Zimmerman protests.
Well, that's right, and those who promoted the idea of Zimmerman being prosecuted are quoted in the local mainstream media down there as saying they were here on our side. And one of the Justice Department officials, we have the audio that is on our website at judicialwatch.org, where he's running one of these so-called community meetings, again, with those who want Zimmerman prosecuted, and I think the Sanford city manager ultimately fired the police chief that finally led to the prosecution of Zimmerman himself. And the Justice Department, quote, mediator says if the black community thinks there's a problem, I don't know if this is an exact quote, but it's close enough. If the black community thinks there's a problem, then there's a problem.
Yeah, no, very, very, very frightening.
Does that sound like a neutral neutral take? That sounds like Al Sharpton talking.
Absolutely, and you know what? There's nothing neutral about this Justice Department, and we've heard that from people who have worked career Justice Department employees when it comes to race matters. We're talking to Tom Fitton, Judicial Watch president, here on the Steve Malzberg Show. Let me ask you this, and I'm just asking your opinion, obviously. If there's an acquittal in the Zimmerman trial, certainly, I would believe, legally speaking, the door is still open for the Justice Department to pursue him with civil rights violations. And do you believe that that would be the case?
Well, I don't know, because I would be very worried if I were Mr. Zimmerman, because we've also asked for documents from the Justice Department Civil Rights Division, and we've gotten back saying, the proverbial hand to the face, saying, no, these are documents created for law enforcement purposes. So it seems like there has been, at least at one point, an active investigation. And, given the racial extremism of this president and this Justice Department, notably Mr. Holder and his Civil Rights Division, it wouldn't surprise me. I would be, if I were betting, I'd bet they would try to do something, yes.
Yeah, especially to quell what unfortunately, almost universally, experts, especially down in Sanford, Florida, and many others around the country, are predicting will be a horrific reaction on the streets of Sanford, of Miami, and possibly of other cities around the country. So, like you say, I wouldn't want to be George Zimmerman in any way, shape, or form with this Justice Department and with this state prosecution, which is obviously politically motivated. People like Alan Dershowitz have called for the removal of the person who brought these charges in the first place. And Paul Cowan, just told us, Paul Callan, I'm sorry, CNN legal analyst, just before you came on, Tom, told us that if there is a manslaughter conviction, he believes that that will be overturned on appeal because they just don't have the evidence to maintain that conviction under appeal. So it's just a prosecution that should never have been brought. And I'm seeing how this jury might come back with manslaughter because the jury does not know that could result in a 30-year prison sentence. They're not told that. So I just fear for George Zimmerman. I really do.
Yeah, I mean, the problem that Zimmerman has is that something terrible went wrong, and Zimmerman may be guilty of some misjudgments in terms of, my view is if you see someone suspicious, you call the police and leave it be, unless there's an evident imminent harm to body, limb, or property. But that all being said, what happened that led to the shooting, he may be innocent of the charges, that's for sure, and it doesn't look like they have a case otherwise. It's a terrible situation, but of course the Justice Department comes in, and this is what the local police initially thought, well, we can't really have a prosecution here. That's why there was no initial arrest.
Right, no evidence.
And then the Justice Department comes in, and here in Washington, Steve, we say the Justice Department, it doesn't scare people because they know what it's about. But if you're a local official and the Justice Department flies down, like Perez did, and then the peacekeepers show up and say you need to meet with these people to help mediate, that's a hammer coming down.
And maybe, and if you don't do this, we will put a overseer on your department, and we will investigate your department for corruption, for this, for that. We'll look at every case you've ever prosecuted or didn't prosecute. We'll find racial discrimination. I mean, very easily ways to scare. Hey, Tom, so just one other question. You going to keep pursuing those other documents, or is that a dead end?
It may potentially result in a lawsuit, and hopefully the public interest now in what the Justice Department is doing, there'll be other public pressure and pressure from Congress to get more information about just what the heck the Justice Department was up to there. You may want Zimmerman to go to jail forever, but we might all agree that the Justice Department probably shouldn't involve itself in what was going on down there and busing people in or allowing people to be bussed in and helping them be bussed
Unbelievable.
in.
Tom, thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Tom Fitton, ladies and gentlemen, Judicial.